Okay, great. All right, Gail is going to call the first Board of Public Works and Capital Assets meeting in order. It's February 9th, 2021. Who's taking minutes today, Andrew? Or are we doing it remotely? Or
Recorded, yep.
Okay, cool. We'll have a roll call. Formal members. Gail is here.
Guzikowski's here. Tolman here. Galley here.
Richard's here.
Ed, you're back there too?
Yep, I'm back here. Can you hear me?
Yep, thank you, sir. All right, item number 3 is approval of minutes. We have none. Obviously, this is first meeting. Just quickly, I think it'd be useful just because just for a group, and some people have not met one another here real quickly. Just do real quick introductions around the room and we'll get on with business. So I'm Ken Gale, obviously, for I know all of you. 5th District Alderman, Common Council President. So, Alderman Guzikowski.
Chris Guzikowski, 6th District Alderman. Alderman Mike Tolman, 4th District Alderman.
Brian Johnston, Utility Engineer.
Mike Sullivan, General Manager, Utility Department.
No, that's it.
No. Public Works Director, Ted Johnson.
City Engineer, Mike Simmons.
Distribution Manager at the Water Utility, Darren Allard.
Plant Manager, Mike Rose. Derek Danner, County Manager, Utility.
Max Gagan, Assistant City Administrator, Comptroller.
Luby. Yeah.
Andrew Vickers, City Administrator.
Bob Segali, citizen, lived here 20 years.
Bill Richard, former chairman of the water utility.
4-time mayor.
And Fred Seifert, member of the new board.
Welcome aboard, all. Next item of business, item number 4, is my appointment of Alderman Guzikowski as chairman of the Board of Public Works. And from that standpoint, I will turn it over to Alderman Guzikowski to carry on with the meeting.
All righty. Item 5, review section 2.23A2 of Municipal Code establishing a Board of Public Works and Capital Assets. This is Andrew?
Yeah, I can speak to this. Thanks, Alderman Guzikowski. As everybody is aware, late 2020, we made some changes to the board, committee, and commission structure here in the city of Oak Creek. Really pertinent, germane to this group, the new Board of Public Works and Capital Assets is really a consolidation of the Water and Sewer Utility Commission, the Capital Improvement Committee, as well as the Traffic and Safety Commission. So we kind of squeezed all those together and created this new Board of Public Works and Capital Assets, realizing public works are both above ground and below ground. Capital improvements are obviously our large assets and large projects, which the CIP committee usually handled at least on a budgetary basis every year. And then the Traffic and Safety Commission, formerly staff, aldermanic committee. Was there citizen representation on that too? I can't recall, even though it was only 2 months ago. You know, that group really deals with the outcomes of that group are really typically public works projects. Safety improvements via signage or crosswalk adjustment or any other physical improvements to the right of way, typically what that group deals with. So we combined those groups at the end, effective December 28th. And just to really make sure we're all singing from the same hymn book here, section 223, creating the new Board of Public Works among some other committee work that we changed a bit. The board consists of 3 alderpersons annually appointed by the council president, 2 citizen members, and then 1 alternate member. The Common Council, Mayor Dan and Ken made those appointments at previous council meeting, and the alternate citizen is Fred Seifert. So the main distinction there is the alternate votes on matters when one of the other citizen representatives, in this case Bob or Dale, is not in attendance. But we do wish, and this was I wouldn't say a compromise, it was a strategy we had to get more citizen input on this new board, but also make sure that the balance of, I guess, the majority was representative of the Common Council via the alderman on the committee. So we fully expect that the alternate member participates as though he or she is a voting member, but in the event, only in the event one of those other citizen members are absent, the alternate would step in and have a vote then. I guess that's the rundown on the chapter, the code section that was updated. And before we get into kind of the duties and the authorities here, which is really the next item, I'll just pause and see if there's any questions there on. Just to be real clear on the alternate too, the alternate does count towards the quorum when one of the other folks is not here. So it's really a 5-person commission, board, with that alternate voting when really standing in the place of one of the other citizen alternates in total.
Any questions? Dale or Fred?
No, sounds good. Sarge,
All right, yeah, should we move on to 6 then?
Sure can.
Discussion recommendation on board scope and request for delegated authority. Andrew?
When we were going through this change, we had, I think, 3 public hearings of this strategy, which was a reflection of our strategic action plan, which is really the council and staff guideposts for things we want to do and things we want to get after, initiatives we want to undertake. It was very clear that we had a long history of an independent water and sewer utility commission. There was a lot of value in that. And we wanted to make sure that we acknowledge the differences of the utility funds. The way the utility operates a bit differently, but mostly financial related. They are an enterprise fund of the city, so we have some distinction there from the other, I guess, venues or topics, if you will, that will come before this board. So Mike Sullivan and I took a crack. We pitched this back and forth a bit. I'd invite you at any time, Mike, to chime in as well at any time. We really wanted to, although we were creating this new Board of Public Works and Capital Assets, we really wanted to have this group have some sort of autonomy in the handling of certain affairs and finances and projects of the utility, but also handling certain affairs of public works. And when I mean handling, giving this board a level of authority a la what the utility commission had enjoyed, but in different avenues as well, in the public works realm and the CIP realm. So when we go through this, certainly we didn't want to completely blend the utility operations together because they are unique, especially financial. And we wanted to create some, really a request for this commission board to come up with to the Common Council to say, hey, can you vest in us a certain level of authority, whether it be spending or certain approvals, et cetera. With the creation of the Joint Personnel and Finance Committee, we envision and expect that the previous matters that were previous personnel matters handled by the commission would go through the other regular channels of the city via the Personnel and Finance Committee. So the personnel stuff is really kind of over here in a different setting, a different different committee of jurisdiction. But we have this, dialogue we need to have with this new board about what we want to request in terms of spending authority, et cetera. And we took a crack at certain phrases or avenues or venues where this group could say, hey, I think, we want to implement the budget as it's approved by the Common Council or the board, if you so choose, in the capital assets realm, the CIP realm, but also the utility and DPW and certain engineering functions as well. So I'll stop there. We can kind of walk through this a little bit, but really we want, we're asking you to, discuss this. Did we miss anything? Are there other aspects of this that we wanted to create for this board? But certainly at a minimum, filling in the blanks that you see on the on the piece in your packet defining the areas of responsibility versus the common council responsibility. After that at all, or?
Mike, go ahead.
No, I think it was a very good summary.
Okay. And you had something to say?
Oh, I was just making some notes for myself along the way here, so. And then for Alderman Tolman and you in particular, not having been around the water utility, there's some of the nuances that they don't come up often in the prior iteration of the water utility board that I think that this is going to have to be somewhat of an evolutionary process. We're probably going to be revising our protocols and kind of our standards and how we go about business, maybe intermittently as we go over the next certain amount of time frame. So I'd say this is going to be an ongoing discussion. So I can't imagine, and I don't expect we're going to hit everything that's going to really kind of come up that may need to be addressed. But the board, I expect this body to meet at least once a month, as had the Water Utility Commission, sometimes maybe more than that, given what's going on in certain sort of budgetary processes or capital needs or capital revisions. So I think at least for the near term, it'll be relatively evolutionary, and we should expect that, I think, to kind of serve the community well that way.
And thank you for meeting at noon today to work with my work schedule. Going forward, I can check and make sure if we want to move it to an earlier time frame, I can make that work. I just need to know if that's the preference of the board, and we can do that.
Yeah, we had a long-standing, second Tuesday at 9 o'clock was so we kind of think we took a census and staff and folks could handle this time frame. So if it grows to be a burden, we can re-examine.
Yeah, but if you prefer to go earlier, I can make that work. So let's just if we want to do it, let's start marching forward with an earlier time frame. So it's up to you guys, really. Earlier?
I'm open for an early meeting. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because Ken has got the restrictions with the,
Yeah,
2, 3 o'clock.
And at 2 or 3,
Right, yeah.
depending on what time of
Okay.
the year it is. So.
I appreciate the comments on this being evolutionary. Certainly, this is a change. And disruption is never perfect from the get-go. And this is exactly what this is. It's something we have never done. It's very different with the Utility Commission, being absorbed into this, more council representation on this board. So I appreciate those comments because this is certainly that. Evolutionary is a good word for that.
I've got a question here.
Sure.
Pardon me for interrupting. On the personnel side, on the personnel committee, moving forward on some of these, we handle some pretty sensitive issues in closed session. How are we going to treat that moving forward? Or is that something we have to discuss before we?
All of those sensitive issues that I can think of will be handled in your personnel and finance committee, which you are on, of course. And you brought up that point when we were having this public discussion on these board committee and commission changes. We had, if you recall, Alderman Tolman, some citizen representation on that personnel and finance committee, and we decided to just keep that, given those sensitive matters, just keep that a three aldermanic position body, if you will. So those will all be handled in that venue.
Right.
That's not going to, from my understanding, that's not going to change. What you guys are doing now is going to stay the same. So if you have to have closed session for personnel, it'll be handled that way.
Okay.
You really just have additional employees that you may oversee, like the salary ordinances and things like that would all be, all be at the common council level with your input at the personnel committee, any, I suppose, disciplinary matters, et cetera.
So and
that would be the personnel
my
committee.
lateral was going to be, Mike, like the situation we dealt with in the last year or so, I remember, that would flow through the new personnel committee rather than at this body's level, right?
I don't know exactly what you're speaking of, but yes, absolutely. Everything personnel related would go to the personnel committee.
And it's from that standpoint, the water utility intends to maintain a separate legal representation from the human resource, or will we continue as an entity wide with Rob's firm? How do you envision that, Andrew?
Well, I think we use the same attorney anyway, so I don't think that's going to be much of a change. You know, it's
I'm not sure if
really,
he's on retainer from the water utility or how we typically.
No, and to me, I don't intend to use them at all. I see no need to because everything's running through personnel. So if there's a disciplinary issue or what have you, that's coordinated through personnel. And if HR wants to employ those outside resources, that's.
So we're going to trust that you and Judy are going to be integrating and taking care of that, Mike. Is that your understanding as well and your desire?
That was part of my question. Yeah.
Okay.
just to round this out a little bit on the personnel side of it, we did, stand up a new employee manual on August 1st. We did know that there were some nuances with the utility operations that needed to be handled specifically at the plants, different schedules and things like that. An addendum was issued to that personnel manual to address those matters. So we really do have one, guiding document there for the personnel committee, personnel and finance.
Hiring and advertising will be done centrally.
Yeah, through
and
HR.
Interviewing.
Yeah, so that's how we're doing it now. Yeah,
we'll come up with a standing committee or ad hoc committee for hiring decision making, or how do we envision that?
Well, it depends on what level of employee. Usually we, anybody under the management level, we typically just handle as an administrative matter, whether that be, Ted at Public Works or Mike Simmons in engineering or Mike Sullivan at the utility. That shouldn't change much.
You guys good with that? Good, Mike?
Yep.
Bob? Thoughts?
Dale or Fred, you guys, any issues with that?
No problem.
That's good? No?
I think it's really important though to point out maybe the obvious, but this is a group that handles public works issues above ground or below ground. So you can say utility issues. It handles capital improvement budgeting, and that's really important. So as you see, we've drawn this up and for you to discuss and add and fill in the blanks. My hope is that this group does get to implement to a delegated threshold, implement the capital improvement budgets of the city, whether that be on the utility side of things or the city side of things. So pick a number. It's in here. Pick a number. If this group is going to be creating that budget at the beginning of the budgetary process, just like the CIP committee did, that goes to council with your recommendation. The council adopts the budget. And we just thought it was a little silly. I think on next Tuesday's agenda, Chief Anderson has an $11,000 or $12,000 evidence camera, that he has to right now under our purchasing thresholds at the staff level and things have to go back to the council, and it's $2,500 under budget or something like that. So we're going to work out the purchasing policy piece. Max is on board now, so he'll take a look at that in due time to make sure that's not inhibiting. But we do want this group to offer to the council, hey, we can, anything that's, less than 50, less than 75, less than $1 million, whatever it is you decide, if that CIP item could just come to this Board of Public Works for approval, council will pay the voucher on the all other than utility side through the regular voucher process that will continue to flow through. But if you could give the go-ahead on, budgeted to a certain degree and then unbudgeted to a certain degree, CIP items that come forward. That's really what we're asking this group, really the council, to delegate to this group to say, anything under 100K, if it's in the CIP budget, go to this group and get it approved. We don't really want to handle that business because we already said that we agree with the logic, the priority, it's in the budget, and to a degree, if it comes under budget or even a little bit over budget, keep that here and move on in life with giving us the go-ahead.
Do you want to go through, should we go through the financial oversight and just start adding a number next to what we have to add here?
Sure, yeah, that'd be fine.
Yeah, my thoughts are, Mike, I don't know if you think the same or not, but you got to take it, from my standpoint, is you take advantage of the experience we have, not only on the Common Council, but also the representation on the water utility. That's why we sought for the continuity of bring folks from the water utility board, because it's not an easy business to understand. So it helps to have some people who have been around it a while to make the decisions. The rest of the Common Council, I think, should have some comfort in the fact that they can vest some decision-making in some of the other body members that are part of these boards that maybe have a little more time invested in them or can spend a little more time looking at these issues. So, I'd opt to give it as much decision-making power as we feel comfortable, rather than
I agree.
rather than having everything go to the council, because I think those discussions are
I
kind of
agree.
waste of time at the council level, really.
Yeah, just because they're so out of the loop on it.
Yeah. Everyone's got their expertise and what they're interested in, and
Well, where do you recommend we start, Ken, then, with putting a number out there or throwing it out there?
then we're gonna have to rely on, especially because, Ted and Mike too, because you guys, you're gonna have to obviously understand, you're gonna have to play major parts in these decision-making too. As department managers and guys with a lot of experience, we're gonna trust your judgment, what makes sense and what maybe should have a second pair of eyes at a second level of decision-making. So that's what I would, you ballpark what makes sense, and ballpark a spot maybe where you're not comfortable saying, we're going to make the decision at this board rather than at the common council. So, I don't know. Do you want to? You're talking about going right at item B, Guzzi, or?
Well, yeah, or any, is that where you guys want to start?
Well, it's laid out, organized. It's
Yeah.
probably easier just to kind of pick at them and get it
All
done.
along already? Well, then, financial oversight according to contracts pertaining to the utility projects up to what? For B.
So on average, I just went back the last 3 years and looked, the average contract awarded was a little over $200,000. The range is anywhere from, a couple $1,000 on up to a couple $1 million. So I would say in a typical year, we're under $1 million on the high end. We have had some that were higher than that. We have, if the average is 200,000, then we have a fair amount that are above 200,000. I think we had, if you want to give just kind of
You
a
put it
brief
a million?
estimate of a couple of projects that we got
$1
coming.
million?
We got some 600,000s and 700,000s coming, so.
Does $1 million make sense?
It does to me, because I think we far more rarely get above $1 million on a project.
Fair?
Yeah, fair. Just upcoming projects, we got the Howell Relay project that's from Groveland to just south of Drexel. That's 1.9 million. That's coming up this year. We got a PLC replacement project down at the treatment plant. That's 700,000. Sanitary rehab project this year is another 750,000. What else is out there? Rawson Avenue Relay is 550,000. Weatherly is 150,000. So they're kind of all over the board.
So does it matter, Andrew, that we think utility contracts as either for long-term capital or short-term capital? Because there's stuff in the street that is different than a vehicle.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? It's
The bonding is always has and always anticipated to go to council.
So I'm not sure if the rest of the guys that feel comfortable authorizing us to give the decision on $500,000 worth of equipment versus, say, street project, $1 million. Well, no kidding, it's $1 million. So it's, you know what I'm saying?
I think that's really, sorry to interrupt, I think that's really the difference between awarding a contract and approving a purchase, is what you're getting at. I mean, the bigger awards are going to be bid out. I don't know if that's the distinction. I think you could probably stay within the realm of the dollar amount, knowing it's an award of a project contract, not, buying a ladder truck.
That's the key word, is a contract.
Yeah.
So do you guys feel comfortable with $1 million then as the dollar amount for utility contract projects?
Yeah, include professional services awards, since they are not RFP, generally speaking. What do you think about that?
I mean, do you usually include that in, your contract price, or however we do that?
And historically, there's some standalone professional services deals we have.
Yeah.
At the water utility.
Yeah. Generally, those are pretty small.
No, they're not $1 million. So
No.
I don't know if the common council wants to mess with that or not.
How often are those unapproved, not approved in advance? We're doing a project, obviously we have to engineer a project or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them aren't necessarily related to projects. I mean, they're like the water model.
Right. Well, in that case, there are some undesignated contracts for sure. The water model, that would be approved as a project, and then the engineer would be hired to do that. But yeah, there are definitely some miscellaneous projects that get done that aren't project related, You know, if we have some SCADA work and we need a consultant to help out on that, they'd be working on that.
There's kind of a gray middle zone there that's,
Probably part of that evolution you were speaking
Yeah.
of earlier.
stuff you realize when it comes up. It's like, holy shit, we didn't think about that.
Gentlemen, this is Dale. I would, I can sense both sides of the street here, and I guess I would recommend $500,000. And you can always go up later on, but just so that council becomes more familiar with what we're doing with some of these projects, I think the threshold ought to be $500,000.
Voice of reason. From a contract standpoint, Mike?
Okay with $500,000, as long as, with the understanding, we're gonna keep the distinction between, equipment and projects. I'm okay with that.
You get that down? Okay, half
Yep,
mil.
that should work for B. Starting point.
Should we go right down the line here to D, or are we gonna go line by line, or how do you?
Go to
wanna do
D.
it?
Those are the blanks to fill in. I think the rest of it, Mike and I are pretty
Okay.
much in agreement on, at least the language.
Approval of any budgeted CIP purchase which exceeds the staff purchase threshold up to what?
Or,
Right now, it's pitiful.
I think it's 10,000.
It's ridiculous. So,
And that's why I left that language in as opposed to 10,000 from up to X, because I think we're gonna,
Mike, did you have
do some work on that
expressions
side.
of a certain dollar amount
It
there?
was the same, 10,000 for me, 5,000 for the department heads.
You guys too, Ted, Mike, same thing?
We're at 10 too, but I think in something like that, you would almost have to find out, is there, in the state of Wisconsin, is there something that we can only go legally until we go to a board? I mean, I'd ask Melissa that one.
I know the RFP has a dollar threshold.
The answer is that I'm not an attorney. Don't play one on TV. The answer is, what do you have to publicly bid and what don't you?
Yeah.
I think is what you're getting at,
Ted's
Ted.
got a good point. I
Yep.
think there might be a state, part of the state statute.
But this
Let's
would,
set a number and have Melissa review it. How's that sound?
sure.
Does that sound okay, Mike?
So what number do you want to set?
I think it's pointless that we're reviewing pickup trucks. And
Who's we though?
if it goes to the budget process,
Who's we?
the common council.
Okay,
Yeah, so that's that kind of stuff should happen here.
yes.
This kind of board.
Right.
You know, the chippers, as long as they're budgeted and go through the budget discussion, and the CIP discussion, enough is enough.
You're implementing essentially is what you're doing.
So 50.
What do you recommend?
50.
And then the council may approve over, so what do we the threshold up to what? It seems like right now there's 20,000 out there, or 10,000 and 5,000?
That's the staff threshold. So that's the minimum where we don't have to go to anybody,
Okay.
which we need to work on. I don't know that that's possible to be followed, to be honest, I mean, given the pace of the organization. But, I had in my mind, I would get out of my comfort zone if it were more than $100,000.
$100,000?
I can live with that.
Yeah.
It can always change.
Yep.
We're contemplating a little bit too, maybe if it's, a certain, just a certain amount, 100 to 200,000 or something, maybe going to a consent agenda at the common council where you can just at least know, you read the write-up and it's there and you can approve it all in one consent motion, but we'll get, that's the evolution part.
It is,
So,
you do have to put some trust in folks to use their experience and their brains to, if something's controversial, to bring it.
Yep.
If something's not, then you get on with business.
Well, $100,000, is that what we're going with here? Dale or Fred?
Sounds good to me. I think it's whatever you guys feel comfortable with, and it ought to be across the board, not just for water utility. That ought to be an internal thing, including, public works.
Yeah, well, you got a lot of experience, Dale, so you got to, make sure you let us know what you're thinking there, because you've been through this for a long time.
And then the council will approve any amount over what?
Just a quick to Dale's point. Dale, you can see in A, B, and C, it's pretty particular to the utility operations, utility finances, where that's going to be kind of largely the same. You're going to be approving this group will be approving the vouchers for that, even the large ones that are routine. Mike had made that note. D gets into exactly what you just spoke of, Dale. That's anybody. That's Chief Anderson's, detective camera that, happens to be over $10,000. That all that stuff comes to you because remember, again, the top of the hour here, this was the CIP committee at one point too. So that wasn't specific to any individual department or function here. That's the CIP budgets.
And then council to approve over what amount? Andrew, did you have something that you're thinking of?
Looks like that's the 100. That's the 100. Yep.
Same, okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty. E, approval of any unbudgeted CIP up to what?
So if this is not budgeted, not a budgeted item, and it's not the caveat to all of this is the staff is going to, in an emergency situation or, natural disaster or something, we're going to be making the decisions to make those expenditures if we need to. Big issue with the water mains or whatever it happens, we're going to be doing that, of course, like normal. But the unbudgeted number, probably lower than the 100, right? Otherwise we'd lump anything in that's budgeted or unbudgeted. We wouldn't make that distinction. But what is that? Because this could be something that falls out of the sky. So
25? I was thinking 50, but 25.
Yeah,
Like 50.
just like we would with the council, we would be saying, hey, we saved money on this CIP project. We'd come up with a source of funds for that anyway, whether that's this group or the council.
Dale or Fred's 50?
50 sounds like a good number. It's a compromise between 100,000 and, zero.
Dale, anything?
50 makes sense to me.
Alrighty, then let's move on to Common Council shall retain the following authority. So we're going to move on to G, awarding of contracts pertaining to the utility department services exceeding.
So these next three items would just be the mere reflection of what we did the previous.
Okay.
But if we could just go down and talk about, which I don't think is necessarily a lot different than we were operating under for the last several decades, which is what the council will automatically retain in terms of its authority. The ones above were more related to those purchasing thresholds, but these are the more general matters that, do or don't have a price tag, and that's, of course, levying special assessments and establishing assessment rates. That's unchanged.
Andrew, can I?
Yep, sure, anytime.
We didn't discuss F, but I wonder, what was the rationale behind keeping stuff that, say, Ted's and Mike's offices are doing at the common council level rather than sort of taking the lower ticket items off the table?
I don't know that it's necessarily a lower ticket item, but what we do have right now is two separate financial systems. So we do have to have the council, unless we can have that discussion. We do have the council approving the Public Works and Engineering Department. So it's a hybrid of taking over what the utilities authority was. That's a bad word, taking over. Utilizing certain independence that the utility operations and utility department had, given the fact that they are unique, as we spoke of earlier, those nuances, but also the fact that we have a separate voucher system for the balance of the city. That was the only angle there. And again, we can, if this goes really well and council has a good comfort level.
All those things they'd be budgeted or in the CIP process as well, wouldn't they, generally speaking?
Maybe.
Maybe?
But it's really the contracting piece that I'm more concerned about. I think you Melissa would want
All right.
to, not to put words in her mouth, but I think the contracting is a bigger deal.
Okay. Next time.
Purchase or sale of any real city-owned, any city-owned real property, deed restrictions, easements of any kind, borrowing or bond issues, whether new or refinancing of any kind. That's been customary.
You're using Bear too, right, Mike? I think so.
Yeah.
Approving the annual operating budget, that could be up for debate. Sorry, that should be utility budget. Do you want to retain or at least request that you retain the authority to approve that? Or do you want to just make a recommendation to the Common Council to approve that? Either way, I'd like to integrate at least the budget document, whether, that's whether there is a separate standalone utility or not. I want reference to the utility operations in our annual operating budget as an enterprise fund. So either way, it's going to be in one document. It's just, that's pretty simple, except for the CIP, which you guys are going to be looking at. It's pretty much, I don't know, how much have you changed out of that budget the last few decades when you were presented it by the staff and the utility side of it?
I think I'd like to,
not too much.
personally, I'd like to make it a recommendation to the Common Council. I think it's useful to have the rest of the Common Council take a look at these things. Otherwise, other than the members who are serving on this board, they're never going to be looking at it. So you can never have any succession. I think, if people cannot flow back and forth. I think educational wise, it's useful to have all the council members have a better feel for what's going on. I mean, that was somewhat of the point of the entire reorg.
As long as it's a brief review.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to.
Yeah.
2 hour.
We don't need to digest it.
No.
That's the extra workshop we've been having.
Yeah, exactly.
The offsite seminar you'll go to for.
We've got a 3-year run with one workshop max, just so you know. So
I would just throw out there that it is a little different from the city's budget in that it's not an appropriations budget. It really just is a management guideline, a management tool used to see when we need to start looking at rates or rate changes. We don't put in, 17 tools or 14 vests, and that's what we're purchasing next year. We don't know. And the budget is built on future sales that we don't know what those future sales are either. So it really is just a guideline. So it's a little different.
But it is a high level thing you could do, a fast teach in the broad body, right? Or do we have to just make sure we just make a presentation to the Common Council? I don't know.
Maybe just a Oftentimes they're just out of the loop with the questions might come out of left field.
the council is going to be adopting the CIP budgets, which is really I wouldn't want to say more variable, but probably the more interesting part of, hey, the project on Jewel Street is getting done this year. The utility's doing whatever upgrade here and there. The council is already going to be adopting, based on your recommendations that. So I don't think it's too big of a leap. I don't care, but I don't think it's too big of a leap to just have, a half an hour, department presentation of the budget, although it's in a different form than what the rest of the budget looks like.
I can tolerate that. I think it would be useful, though, to make sure folks are as broad a body is aware of what's going on with where the financial status is on either side of the utility, water side, the sewer side, how it looks with. I don't think you get unless you serve in this body. So just a presentation then.
I agree. I don't think those timelines really sync up that well either, because you probably want a little more hindsight in your fiscal year of what next year is going to look like. You probably don't base your projections off of September when we do our regular budget workshop. So either way, it might be a separate, December. What do you usually do yours in January or?
November.
Oh, it is okay. So that's not that far off.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Alderman Tillman, I think, hit the nail on the head, though, if we do it that way, brief is the key word. So.
Got it.
Lots of pictures.
So more of a review.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of like Bridget, she would do that, a couple slides and on. Pretty handy.
Anything else on 6? Answer all the questions that we need to answer, Andrew, on that?
I think the rest of it's, pretty self-explanatory with one exception, which was something I believe Ken spoke to earlier. Whether there's a topic that has hair on it, whether there's perhaps an alderman who, maybe take umbrage or issue with a certain project, whatever that may be, through normal channels. You guys usually contact your council president or your mayor and say, hey, I'd really like to talk about this. It's impactful in some way. That's what we're getting at on R, to say, you know what, we can have any, based on the request of the council president, mayor, or city administrator, which will really be coming from the alderman or myself. We'll go right to the council, or, at least not stop here. If you do air out a project, we'll make sure to go there. I don't think we're going to see too much of that, but just as a safety there to be like, hey, you know what? I know, my position. I'm going to know whether 3 aldermen are for a project and 3 aldermen are against one, and we're going to bring that to the council, right? So you don't have to arbitrate that.
All righty. Are we done with that discussion? Should we move on to 7 with the budget?
Just as we're bringing these two together, we wanted to, we got 3 folks who are, well, I guess Ken, you're the glue in between, but we had 3 folks on the utility commission and then three folks essentially on the council. Just wanted to make you aware of what the 2021 adopted or approved CIP projects were. Mike Simmons and Ted put in place after this spreadsheet here, the spreadsheet of road projects, just so you're aware of that. I wanted to call out just a couple things to make you aware, whether it's just a brief, quick education or things that are definitely going to be coming back.
Maybe, for Bob's sake, just to highlight on how that street thing is, the biannual stuff.
I couldn't speak to it unless you want to, Mike. That's.
Go ahead, Andrew, I'll chime in.
How it's budgeted, where money comes from.
Yeah, so, and maybe we can do a deeper dive on the finances on the city side of, utility aids and things like that, that we could definitely educate you on that. We do our road projects on a 2-year deal, so we don't go out and bid and do road projects every year. We do it, every other year, determined to be more effective that way. I don't know how long have we been doing that?
Since 2013.
I was gonna say it hasn't been forever.
When we floated that debt issue.
Okay.
Yeah, because we impacted that by the P&I every year on that. So
Our city, on the city side, non-utility CIP budget is funded without any levy support at all. There's $1 million of cash, and then there's $1 million that we automatically apply to roads, and the source of that $2 million is the We Energies power plant. Obviously, we're going to have some discussions on that over the next months to see what the long-term game plan is there. But the CIP budget receives no levy support at this time in the city. That's the real high level of it, but that's what it is. So essentially, our budget's our CIP budget's $2 million, and that $1 million goes to roads, $1 million goes to other needs, and that source of funding is the We Energies mitigation money. Just to highlight a couple, I'm not going to go through a HVAC controller replacement for the PD. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but we can provide you a link to the entire budget as well, so you can see the write-up detail on all these if you're so inclined. Drexel Avenue streetscape and placemaking plan. Drexel Avenue from 13th to Howell is due for, well, if anybody's been to the dentist after they've driven down that road lately, you can see there's work that needs to be done. Through the engineering department, we received an 80% federally funded grant to do that road work, which was a really great surprise. A lot of hard work went into that, but it really made us, put this back on the radar and really be able to tackle it from a financial standpoint. That is going to be a big corridor project for us. We really want to do something special on the gateway to the city of Oak Creek. So just wanted to draw your attention to that over the next year or two, we'll be planning that, designing that, talking about community design on that, talking about really making that a gateway corridor. What's the timeline on that, Mike, for?
The construction in 2022.
It is already?
Yep.
All right, never mind. Only 1 year to play on that. Moving down a fleet vehicle lease program, what's this, our third year? I think it's our third year. We changed out all of our DPW light duty fleet by and large. I think it's 36 or 38 of our light duty fleet for DPW. We went on a leasing program. We have not seen a fatal flaw in that. It's a master equity lease program, so it's not like our, if you're making the decision in your household to lease a car or buy a car, it's really different than that. The CIP committee has really liked that program, and it's an annual budget of $200,000. Yep.
Andrew, this is Dale. What is the significance of the yellow highlighted line items?
Those are just the ones that I wanted to draw a little more attention to, Dale. I'm going to walk through those just so you kind of know what they are a little bit in a little bit more detail.
Okay, thank you.
Those were the ones you were going to fund. Streetlight and traffic signal maintenance. We have kind of an annual line item, if you will, for these are really knockdowns of our streetlights. In that fund, hopefully we don't spend $80,000 handling knockdowns every year, so that fund has a little bit of a fund balance in it. 2021 road improvements are a little later on. We've done, per our strategic action plan, we've really been diligent with squirreling money away on the CIP side of it for bridge maintenance, building improvement reserve, and a capital equipment reserve. That's been really handy the last couple of years as we've been able to pull cash out. Obviously we've enjoying a pretty good time right now that will end financially in terms of really having a very healthy budget variance in the general fund of the city every year where, of course, revenues exceed expenditures. Our departments are very diligent about not exceeding their budgets and usually, by and large, coming underneath. So we strategically place that in really sinking funds for capital needs in the future, and we've been diligent, and we can give a report on where some of those funds stand here at a subsequent meeting. A bridge maintenance fund is another one. Large bridges cost a lot of money. We squirrel away $75,000 every year to get within earshot of a large bridge project that we need to do. At least we have some money available there. Design of West Drexel, we talked about that one. Stormwater equipment fund, again, another fund to replace future capital needs with as much cash on hand as we can. Clean soil capping on Lake Vista North. Lake Vista North property, probably know it better as Peter Cooper, and that's is in our TID 13 on the lakefront. And this spring, we've identified a significant source of clean soil to in partnership with MMSD to actually have a source to fund that. And with that partnership on that soil per that MMSD project, we probably stand to gain or save somewhere between $2 and $3 million just on hauling dirt around. So that's something we need to execute. That'll come from the TID. And repaving of West Putes is a unique one. Dale probably remembers the impetus of TID 7 on 27th Street, more or less. And with the increment in TID 7 really turning around the last few years, we're able to do a pretty significant project on West Putes from 15th to 27th Street. If you've driven that, being strategic about coming up with a way to handle that was imperative.
One thing I had mentioned or requested at the last CIP meeting, was if we could add a column to this for the different aldermanic district, because oftentimes we're talking to our counterparts, but we can't easily sometimes, distinguish what's happening or tell them, hey, what's going on in your neighborhood if they're not paying attention to it. So if we could somehow find a way to integrate the aldermanic district, that would be great.
If you look, and then I'll turn it over to Mike and Brian to highlight a few of their projects for more so the aldermen that weren't on the utility. If you look down at the ends of these columns, the city staff requested 4.7 million. The city administrator's office found a way to fund about 4.1 million, and the CIP committee, I can't recall what we did there. We added just a few $1,000s back into the model. And in the end, the council was able to fund 4.16 million out of the $4.7 million of requests. So if we could do that every year forever, that'd be fantastic. But the big one being Ted would probably think it a missed opportunity if we didn't bring this up, is the ball field lighting structure system at Shepherd Hills. It was a big dollar item, and we wanted to further study that. You can see that's $261,000. So really, that's the biggest one biggest item we cannot fund. But in looking at this on a whole, we had a pretty successful CIP budget for this year on the city side of things. With that.
Okay, so on the utility side, water and sewer projects that we've got going, or CIP we've got going, we always start out and talk about individual department requests within the utility. So admin, general, distribution, engineering, treatment plant, those are things that are specific to those areas. And then we'll talk about capital improvement projects. So these are typically your larger water and sewer main projects, things like that. And then lastly, just a status on the projects in progress, which is substantial amount there. I'm going to skip the next sheet so we can go into a little bit more of the detail right away. And stop me at any time if you want to talk about some of these other projects and stuff like that. We certainly can, or we can talk later as well. The first one on our admin general, actually the only one, is replacing our telephone system. We're going to be partnering with the city system that's here in order to replace our old phone system that's nearly 20 years old. It's not going to last forever. That's a relatively small amount. So moving on to distribution, we've got our typical vehicle replacement. We usually try and replace pickup trucks on a 12-year rotating cycle. So we'll look at the age of the vehicle, the amount of hours, the amount of miles on it. Sometimes we'll go out of order relative to age, which is what we're happen to be doing this time. And usually we're in the 1 to 2 pickup trucks a year kind of a thing. There's a couple of years we've done none. I think one year we did 3. Typically we're in that. And this year we identified the construction coordinator vehicle and then our meter reading vehicle as well for replacement. Meter exchange program, we've got to replace our meters on a 20-year cycle, and so there's just an ongoing effort to replace those meters. We're doing meters and heads, so sometimes we'll do just the meter head, sometimes we'll do the meter totally. So that was that amount there. Tandem dump truck, we've been saving for a number of years to replace the dump trucks, 20 years old. We're actually, Streets is going to take that as sort of a spare vehicle, and then we're going to buy a new dump truck there. So instead of going through the trade-in process and that sort of thing, that worked out really well. I think the total on that vehicle is the total budget is $150,000, but I think numbers that are coming in now are going to put it around 120 or so, or 130. So we're doing pretty good there. Hydrant refinishing. So on the major streets, we like to have a contractor come in and epoxy paint, sandblast strip, and epoxy paint those hydrants. They seem to last a whole lot longer than if we just paint them ourselves. Other than that, we have summer help, the students that'll come in and paint in the neighborhoods and subdivisions. That seems to last really well as well. So this amount is just for the contractor to come in and do that. We haven't done it in a couple of years. We tried to do some sandblasting ourselves, and we have a sandblaster. We tried to rebuild it, put it back together, and quite honestly, it's just not very safe. So we want to have a contractor go back out and do that. Sewer truck. So in this case, this is one that we're just adding money to the reserve fund. So we're reserving over a number of years to replace that VACON machine. says here it's a 2014, it's got 20,000 miles on it, so usually has a lot of hours on it is the issue with that one. So I have done a number of repairs here recently on it, but we're still working with it. We're still scheduled to replace it.
Can you give the guys just a quick heads up on how that's used and how often it's used and that kind of thing?
Oh, used virtually daily. We use it to clean out all our sewers. So as we flush down the sewers, we're bringing that debris back out. That goes out on all year long. We also use it to do hydro excavating for water main jobs if we need to go out and try and find a leak on, say, a lateral or on a piece of main where we don't want to dig up the whole road. We'll just go and hydro excavate. Often we'll use it on a water main break if the area is just really sloppy and difficult to excavate around. We'll do that, or if there's fiber or electrical wires or what have you.
How much is that truck gonna cost, Mike?
$400,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big expense when it comes time for it. So we try and put a little bit away for that each time. So moving on to engineering, the project there this time is satellite water leak detection. So there's a satellite system. They started out by trying to find water on Mars. That's where this technology comes from. They've been able to adapt it, create an algorithm that finds potable water, drinking water in the ground up to 10 feet deep. So they find these water main leaks. They're not specific to, it's like a 3-street area that they find it in. So you don't know exactly where it is. They can't tell you if it's a big leak or a small leak, but they give you all these dots on a map and you can go out and investigate which ones you have. It's really twofold, the purpose of it. One is to eliminate disruptions to our customers, that we don't have to go out on a water main break if we can preemptively find these. But also there's a big component to the non-revenue water. So if we've got water leaking out, we're not making revenue on it. So that's what that
how much our annual production, Mike, is non-revenue?
About 8%.
How many gallons a year are we doing?
Good question. Total production gallons per year?
1 billion?
Yeah, about 2 billion, I guess. A little under that, maybe.
A lot of water.
So it's a lot of water, yeah. And we know there's leaks out there. We found a number this last month of small leaks that we're finding. A couple of them that if it weren't the wintertime like this, they would never surface. We'd never find them. Really small pinhole type stuff that we're starting to find more and more of. They're not the big eruptions that you can see. So this project is $60,000 total. We've saved some money previously for it. We're trying to recruit other communities to get involved. There's a minimum mileage, water main mileage that they can do for this project. So if we can get some other communities involved in it, we'll be able to save some money there too. Green Bay did this fantastic project. Moving on to treatment plant, we've got replacement and relining of the chlorine bulk tanks. So the sodium hypochlorite that we bring into the treatment plant, they're in a plastic reinforced tank. That tank only lasts about 10 years and then you have to replace it. That's what we did on our last bulk tanks. We did replace them. There is this relining effort that you can do on the bulk tanks that will effectively renew the inside of that tank. So we're gonna kind of take a stab at it. We're gonna give it a shot. It looks very promising. It's a whole lot cheaper. The 2 day tanks we are gonna have to replace. So those are being replaced. That was $52,000. And actually there's a breakdown here for you to show the cost savings. It's almost half. The next one is replacement of the PLCs. Brian talked a little bit about that. We had saved some money previously. We're putting another $360,000 in it this year, bringing it up to just north of $700,000. The program logic controllers at the plant, that's what effectively controls all of the operations of the plant. So the operators will send commands through the computer to these units. These units then send commands to turn valves on, off, that sort of thing. Some of these are very old. Some of these are pretty old. All of these are it's called here active mature, are really no longer supported. And Alan Bradley, who we've standardized on, is encouraging you to buy new by how they support and charge you for the old one. So you want a replacement part of the old one, it's going to cost you a fortune because we really want you to buy new. Again, these are things you cannot live without at the plant, so we've been very fortunate to have them as long as we have, actually. But they're expensive to do. And we're not done there yet. There's a whole lot more out in the distribution system. I should say a whole lot, but a number out in the distribution system need to be replaced as well. So that'll be a future project we're going to need to work on. I'm trying to go fast, not to waste your time. If I do go too fast, give me a holler. Sluice gate sealing and repair. So the sluice gate, there's sort of 2 of them down. 2 of them down at the treatment plant. in our clear well is where we pump water out. That's where the pumps directly dip into this clear well to pump water out in the distribution system. There's a gate that goes between our filters and that tank. That gate was put in back in the 70s. It had been used several times, but nowadays you don't get any disinfection if you go directly from a filter to that clear well, so you can't use it. DNR has identified it and said, oh, holy cow, that's a huge risk. You need to get rid of that. So we've known about it for years. We've tried to make sure the gate was sealed. We're never going to use the gate, so now's the time to get rid of the gate and put a plate on there. That's actually what the DNR wants anyhow. For a variety of reasons that we'll talk about at future meetings, the DNR has picked this item as this is an emergency and has to get done. So we're working on it. Should be done within the next 2 months tops. I think they're coming in shortly to do that work. We've been working on this for a while to get that done. That's the gate between the two. We also have that clear well tank is split out in 2 halves. That half has a gate on it. That gate is broken. It's in the closed position now. We were able to get it closed, but we need to repair the shaft and the gearing system up on top in order to get that gate to be able to move up and down. You need that gate because you have to inspect the tank dry once every 10 years. If you can't close the gate, you'd have to shut down the entire plant, so you don't want to do that. So that's what that project's about. Okay, next page is upgrading the HVAC system down at the plant. When we did our locker room project, we identified a few problems, as well as just simply living down there, they identified quite a few problems. The current operation system was put in 2003, but the equipment, a lot of it is much older than that. So we need to have an evaluation done as to what, we know some of the things that need to happen, what in total needs to happen down there in the HVAC system. Inspection of the chlorine contact tank. Yeah, this number is going to be a little higher than this. So our chlorine contact tank, big issue with the DNR. We've committed to the DNR that we will inspect the tank more often than we have in the past. We're going to do it on a once every 2-year cycle. This is another item they attached onto. Again, we'll talk about it in a future. The DNR latched onto, we had a deadline at the end of 2020 to complete repairs to the tank. That did not happen. Due to a number of reasons that we'll actually talk about later today, perhaps. So as a result, to avoid a penalty or enforcement, the DNR seemed to have agreed that if we inspect this tank and prove that there's no imminent failure of it, that they'll be satisfied with that. So I'd say that with some trepidation, but we're undertaking that work as well.
How big is that tank, Mike?
1.3 million gallons.
So, you guys know, Guzzi, that's underground next to the treatment plant. So.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, buried underground. Okay, capital projects. So Brian mentioned the Howell Avenue water main relay from Groveland up to just north of Susan. This picture in here is not correct. We have an updated picture that shows it. The original project was going to Forest Hill. That got expanded sort of in the late hour before this budget got approved. The budget did go up to $1.9 million. We originally intended to go to just north of Forest Hill, but had a water main break and saw the condition of the pipe there and realized we need to get all of that 1956 pipe out, and that's exactly what we're doing here with this project. So we do have some other pre-60 pipe in the ground, not a lot, but that's going to be prioritized in our main replacement program as well. Rawson Avenue hydrant relocation. So the county's doing road construction to Rawson Avenue. We want to get ahead of that and get some of these hydrants that are going to be involved in or impacted by construction, get those moved out of the way. After we get a plan done and can see what's out there as far as other utilities, what's in the way, we may move these hydrants ourselves, but we want to have a budget item in case we need to contract that out, in case we don't have the capability of doing it. Centennial Drive sanitary sewer, my goodness. This one is not as simple as it seems. So this is near the post office, west of the fire station there. When those facilities were put in, the sanitary sewer kind of didn't go straight down Centennial and tie in. There's a box culvert there, kind of ran into the way. So this went out into the field area, creek area. That creek is all eroded. The manhole is half exposed now. It's in threat of getting tipped over. We can't get out there and access it any longer. So the original thought was simply run the sanitary sewer underneath that box culvert and tie it into the sewer that's there. That's not as easy as it seems. It's the proximity to the box culvert and the depth of the sanitary sewer makes it very difficult to do. So one of the other options that's being explored now is possibly rehabbing that creek area. Sounds like the DNR is somewhat supportive of that. They may actually even have a little bit of money for it. So we may be doing, this may change in its character a little bit, but we may be doing that to try and save those manholes, and it'll improve that area. Low lift drive maintenance, this has been an ongoing project. It's got a lot of different components to it. So the low lift drive simply needs maintenance. It also needs better access control in the top end of it. It needs cameras down at the bottom end. We need drainage improvements around the building, that we're having icing problems down there over the winter time. So that it sort of wrapped up a lot of things relative to our low lift pumping station. Low lift pumping station is right on the lake, and it simply pumps water up to the treatment plant. That's really its only function. Various sanitary sewer repairs. So we do sort of unnamed or non-specific, similar to the road project. We'll do lining. This year we're doing exclusively lining, but some years we'll do lining, a little bit of excavation, sometimes spot lining, sometimes full length lining. All of our sewers have been cameraed. Many of them multiple times. We're on a requirement, court order through MMSD, but I shouldn't say through them, but all the 28 municipalities are required to video every 5 years our sanitary sewer system. So we do that. We've identified through this NASCO rating system and rated and prioritized the mains that need some sort of rehab effort. That's what this project is. It's been ongoing. We've done 3, I think this is like the 4th year now of doing this. Prior to that, we didn't do a lot of sewer maintenance. We didn't really need to, and now we're starting to find some items where we do. The good news is there's nothing that is imminent failure. It's just maintenance items. So.
Who does the camera work? Is that our own team?
Yeah, we have a camera truck, and we have the flushing and camera. They try and do in tandem. Mm-hmm. So we have both those guys out there doing that, and that goes on generally year round. Although sometimes in the winter time, when you get a lot of that cold air up on top, it impacts the video in the sewer, and you get a lot of fog video. So while you did video the sewer, you didn't get any value out of it. So we're changing that schedule up a little bit, but yeah, they're out there all the time. And lastly, I'm not going to go through all of these projects. I certainly can update you on any of them if you like. These are the projects in progress, so the projects that were previously budgeted that we're still working on. Most notably, the one at the top is a water quality improvement project, or the project that addresses the 7 DNR issues that they have with our chlorine contact tank that's underground. That's currently got $12 million saved for it. So that hinges on our discussion later today too.
If I may, Ms. Dale, Sully, you were talking about the low lift station. I don't know if you noticed in the national news yesterday, there was a claim of somebody hacking into a water utility in Florida. If you would, just turn around and give me your comments or give the staff your thoughts on how vulnerable is our water utility to being hacked.
Yeah, thank you. That's great, Dale. So if you guys heard, yeah, there was a utility in Florida that did get hacked, and they turned, the hacker turned the chemical that they used to adjust pH way up significantly. I mean, like bizarrely up, way up. The operator caught it and was able to address it, but it does expose a vulnerability certainly for them. Our solution is really old school. We're air gapped from the internet. We have no connection. We have no remote control into the treatment plant. The 2 networks, both the process network and then the admin network that you do your spreadsheeting and your word perfect work on, or whatever, your word processing work, those are separate. So there's no connection between those 2 as well. So yeah, thank you for that. It is kind of old school, and it does limit your ability. The one nice feature is you could have someone on vacation be able to log in and diagnose problems or help you out, but it's that huge vulnerability there. So we've done very well not having any connection at all.
Value, it looks like. Alrighty. Is that it on the budgets then?
I just have one question, Mike, on nice presentation, by the way. On that satellite water leak detection system, you said it's only like specific to like a 3-block area. Is that something you guys are on board with 100%? Or?
Yeah, what they'll do is when they find a spot, it'll go down, it'll be within that 3 blocks someplace. So what we'll do is send a crew out and start listening and narrowing down that to try and find the leak. And based on Green Bay's experience, there will be some we can't find. that we don't think there's a leak there or can't find that leak, and well, so be it. But it's gonna identify a lot, like we've had this last month, that we can be more proactive then. It'll show us where they are. So, yeah, and we're gonna give it a shot. Green Bay signed up for another program because they were so impressed with it. This has been done all over the country, but only Green Bay is the only one in Wisconsin so far. So we've talked to them. We've listened to a couple of their presentations. It's certainly worth a try. It's really, really good for a utility that has an active leak program. This typically is a whole lot cheaper than what they've done in the past. We have not had an active leak program because we didn't really feel we needed it. It turns out there's a number of leaks we found that never would have surfaced. So yeah, they're out there, and I mentioned 8% on our non-revenue water. If we can notch that down, that's going to be good for us. In addition, there's a new way of looking at. I shouldn't say it that way. There's a newer way of reporting leaks that the PSC is looking into. The American Water Works Association has had this for years. The PSC, I think, is going to require this. We actually participated in the group that was piloting this here in the state. If that happens, that's going to make the look at non-revenue water more critical. And I think that we're going to be, the number could look a little bit worse for us. If you get to 15%, you're going to get a naughty letter from the PSC. So after that, they start getting concerned about the rates you're charging your customers if you're letting all this water go uncounted. So it's, yeah. Yes, sir.
How long is that agreement for the satellites data for?
So we'll do 2 images that they'll analyze, and that's it. And after that, we could do it again if we wanted to. Our anticipation at this point is we'll do the 2 1 year apart. They take different images so you can get different looks. And after that, we'll just see how many. If there's 250 dots and it takes us, 4 years to get to all of them, then I think we'll take a break and do that I don't anticipate this something being a yearly thing. I think we'll have enough work by the first look.
I wasn't clear as to how often the data was updated and how long of a contract period or anything like that.
Gotcha, yeah.
So we have a static image, Mike, that we work off of?
Yes.
So it isn't a database we're interacting with? We have a static image they produce?
That's what they'll give us, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll give us a static image, yep.
I think it's a great way to be proactive in looking at your water leaks within your system. It certainly has the potential for minimizing any major failures of the water lines in different areas. And our city has got enough maturity that we're starting to have some of these issues with different sections of the city, just like what we've just seen with Howell Avenue. And we've had a number of them. And I'm sure those will all pop up as the year goes on and we talk about water main break.
How many miles of main, Mike, do we have?
195 miles of main.
Is that it on the presentations? Thanks, Mike, for doing that. Then if we're done with that, then we should go to 8 here, right? Consider a motion to move into closed session pursuant Wisconsin State Statutes number 19.85, sub 1, sub E, and G to discuss the following: wholesale water contract. All in favor? Or Guzikowski made that motion.
I'll second it.
Tillman seconds. Roll call.
Eli.
Guzikowski, aye.
Aye.